Hello everybody. Today I have learned that it's still a little bit early in the year to go gallivanting around in just a t-shirt, but there we go. Anyway, a minister in the Cabinet Office has resigned over apparent differences between his claims about investigations launched into journalists reporting on the think tank Labour Together and the apparent facts. But will the departure of Josh Simons signal an end to the search for the facts? Guardian reporter Henry Dyer, himself apparently the most recent subject of scrutiny by investigators hired by Labour Together, has published the following, and I quote, "The Labour minister Josh Simons has resigned from the government after the Guardian revealed that he falsely linked reporters to a pro-Kremlin network in emails to GCHQ, despite having claimed to be surprised and furious about a PR firm's investigation into their journalism. The Makerfield MP had faced mounting pressure over his role in Labour Together's commissioning of the lobbying and public affairs agency APCO, to investigate journalists reporting on the think tank's failure to disclose political donations. Simons faced a formal investigation by the Prime Minister's independent advisor on ministerial standards, Sir Laurie Magnus. Magnus concluded that Simons had not breached the ministerial code, but that there was a, and I quote, distraction and potential reputational damage in Simons remaining in the government. In his resignation letter to Keir Starmer, Simons said he had commissioned APCO in November 2023 to investigate whether the think tank's confidential material had been disclosed through a hack of the Electoral Commission. After the Sunday Times reported that APCO's report made baseless allegations about its journalist Gabriel Pogrund's faith, upbringing and personal and professional relationships, Simons had said he was surprised and shocked to read the report extended beyond the contract by including unnecessary information on Pogrund. Magnus said Simons acknowledges that this perceived gap between his public statements and what he now accepts appears to be a more extensive scope has been damaging. The report says nothing about an alleged APCO investigation into its author, Henry Dyer, that was claimed to be ongoing as recently as last week. In The Guardian's previous report about that, as quoted by me here on YouTube, it was claimed that a lobbyist who examined journalists on behalf of an influential think tank has now been accused of recently investigating a Guardian reporter. Tom Harper, a senior director at the US public affairs company APCO, was the author of a 58-page report examining the journalists behind a 2023 Sunday Times story about undisclosed donations to Labour Together, the think tank that was instrumental in Keir Starmer's Labour leadership victory. According to the Sunday Times, Harper has since been examining Henry Dyer, an investigations correspondent at The Guardian, who has been reporting on the revelations. It said Harper had been making inquiries about Dyer as recently as last week, and suggesting, without any evidence, he could have been part of a wider pro-Russia campaign. So what's happening about that? Is Labour Together still commissioning investigations? And will reports on these alleged activities drop off now that a political scalp has been taken? In Westminster culture, once a minister resigns, the immediate political heat drops. The accountability moment is deemed to have occurred and newsrooms pivot to the next crisis. Unless a regulator has already been formally notified of the matter, a parliamentary committee schedules hearings, or new documentary evidence emerges, momentum can dissipate. That doesn't mean investigations are formally curtailed, but it does mean the oxygen that sustains them can thin out. That means mainstream outlets are only likely to refer to the alleged investigation into Dyer if it is confirmed, if it materially affects the current story, and if it is legally safe to report. The Guardian's resignation piece was structured around Simons' departure and the ministerial standards review. It wasn't an omnibus recap of every related development and wasn't meant to be. What happens next will determine whether that's suppression or merely editorial narrowing. Resignations often act as pressure valves. They can close a political chapter prematurely, create a sense that the matter is resolved, and reduce appetite for digging into systemic issues. Whether that happens here depends on whether the PRCA investigation into APCO continues independently, regulators remain engaged on the donations issue, or journalists keep pursuing the governance dimension rather than just the personality fallout. The determinant is whether ongoing inquiries are formal and external or informal and media-driven. Formal processes are harder to bury. Media-driven scrutiny depends on sustained interest. Will another journalist have to be targeted to make this a current issue again?